I want to get into the sales aspects of it a little bit because where I'm coming at it from is when you say challenging selling, I look at that as expanding a customer's horizons, examining their belief systems, dissembling them and taking them apart and saying, okay, so they're looking at the world through this lens. I need them to look at the world through this lens to buy my product. What are the shifts that I have to take place? How are they looking at their identity in a way that is incongruent with buying my product? How do you look at all of this?
Welcome to Da Vinci's Discourse, where the minds of today's most innovative entrepreneurs are unveiled and explored. And my name is Kyle Campbell, your guide on this journey into the depths of the entrepreneurial psyche. So sit back, relax, and get ready to dive into the minds of the greats. This is Da Vinci's Discourse.
Perfect, man. Let's do it. So Gerhard, how do you pronounce your last name, man? Gerhard Schwandner?
Gschwandtner. You don't pronounce the G.
Schwandner. Okay, perfect. I did it pretty
Right.
well though. Come on, give me some credit here.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, man. So yeah, dude, welcome. So you're the author of 17 books. You've trained more than 10,000 salespeople. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, man? I'm curious. I'm fascinated.
Well, let me go back. I grew up in Austria, in Salzburg, the city where Mozart was born, and I went to business school and worked for a contractor, and I had a girlfriend in Paris, and I was on the plane, and next to me was somebody from Belgium, and he was the CEO of a company that was headquartered in Salzburg. It was a subsidiary, actually, and the headquarters was in Paris. And we chatted on the flight from Munich to Paris. And he says, "It's amazing, you're fluent in French. I'm looking for somebody." And I said, "What are you looking for?" And he says, "I need an assistant to the president, and I want you to be coordinating with the sales department in Austria and the headquarters in Paris."
Hmm.
And I thought, I tried to get the interview and aced it and got the job. And then all of a sudden, I found myself in a position to shuttle to Paris just about twice a month and help salespeople make connections with the engineers in France at headquarters, and I sort of invented a new way of selling, which was an entertainment sales and and a business trip sales. So we invited contractors to fly to Paris at our expense, and we wine and dine them in Paris, and then we showed them the capabilities of the machines we were selling, and it worked like a charm. Once they saw the great technology that we were selling and had a good time, sales went up. And 2 years later, they transferred me to their headquarters in Paris. And I loved selling, and I traveled with the best salespeople in the company at like 1,600. And I studied their approaches, and I created a sort of a masterclass sales training course where we shared the top performers' behaviors, habits, skills, and mindsets. And I invented a training methodology I called interactive video training, where we did video role plays. And wherever I went with the training, and people sat through it in Germany and then in France and England, they had a 35% increase in sales. And then I got married. My wife was American. We lived in Paris, had a great time. And then the American subsidiary manager asked me, and he says, "You have such a great record in Europe. Can you come and train my US sales team?" And so I said, "Yeah." We designed a course. I traveled through the United States, trained the whole distributor organization all over the country. And then he offered me a job to get a transfer from Paris to New Jersey.
Nice.
And right. And I was thrilled because I always wanted to be in the United States.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a great opportunity. And 2 years after that, I've written articles in different magazines about sales training and sales leadership. And I got a lot of calls, and people say, "Are you available for consulting?" So uh, then when my twins were born, they were 2 years old. I quit my job and started my own sales training consulting company. So I had twins to take care of. I had taken a big risk, and interest rates at the time were 20% under Reagan, and but I was ready. I didn't care, and I quit on a Friday. On Monday, I had a $15,000 deal,
No shit.
and
Huh.
by the end of the year, I doubled my salary.
No
And
kidding.
then I was traveling all over the country doing sales training. And my wife said, "Is there a way where you can cut down on travel?" And I said, "Yeah,
Um,
I can develop a training course. I've developed many training courses for the company." So I created something generic called nonverbal selling power, where I promise people to teach them nonverbal communication techniques together with professional selling skills.
hmm.
So we called the course The Languages of Selling, Verbal and Nonverbal Selling Power. And I sold it
Languages,
through direct
plural. I
mail.
like how you made that plural. It's interesting. It's a nice little
Yeah,
differentiation right there. Okay, okay, go on.
exactly.
Hell yeah.
So people were really intrigued, and I had some high school kids, put those kits together, and they were stacking up in my basement, and I had about 250 of those kits ready before I actually did a direct mail piece. So spent a lot of money and time
Hmm.
in creating all this. And I had a really good direct mail piece. I hired like a copywriter in New York, and he did a wonderful job. That when I read it, I thought I want to buy this myself. And I said to my wife, "I'm really worried. The mailing is going out tomorrow."
Hmm.
And she says, "What are you worried about?" And I said, "I worry that I don't have enough inventory."
That's a good worry, though. That's the opposite worry
Right.
that most people have going into a situation like that, man.
Right. That's my overly optimistic nature. I did sell half of the inventory on the first go around. And then I did the math, and I thought that direct mail expense is so high because I'm printing those fancy brochures. And so I asked my graphic designer, "Is there a cheaper way to produce that so I have a better margin?" And he says, "Well, you may as well print on newspaper. That's the cheapest."
Hmm.
And I said, "That's an idea. Let's explore that idea." And I created a newspaper with him, 8-page newspaper tabloid. I gave it a catchy name, Selling Power, and wrote articles about effective sales training and nonverbal communication techniques. And then I had a 2-page ad
Nice.
for the course. It cut my direct mail cost in half, and I sold just as many courses with that cheap newspaper. But then something happened that really made a huge difference, which is I got a call from somebody at Liberty Mutual in Boston, and he said, "I want to buy 100 of those newspapers." And I said, "Why would you want to buy my direct mail piece?" And he says, "I want to share it with salespeople because there's really good stuff in there."
Huh.
And at the time, there were not many good publications for salespeople. There were just a few newsletters, and they were expensive. And to make a long story short, I sold about 2,000 copies of the direct mail piece. So I had to go back to printing, mailed up more, put more in inventory. And so with the next go around, I sold 3,000. Then I did volume one, number two. And then my wife said, "I think you have a new uh, opportunity here." And I said, "What's that?" "Well, you could ask for subscription money because obviously what you're writing is in demand and people want to read it." And I said, "Okay, yeah, help me design an ad." And uh, offer this for, let's say, a 1 year subscription is $12. And we come out with 6 issues. And if I get 500 subscriptions on the first go around or more, I will continue. Otherwise, I refund the money. And within 6 weeks, I had 1,200 paid subscribers. By the end of the year, I had 7,500. Then 90% of them renewed. And then I got a call from somebody who said, I want to advertise in your publication. And I said,
There we go. I
what
was
do you
waiting for that one. Okay. All right. I see where this is going.
exactly? I had
Mhm.
not thought of it. And I said, yeah, an ad page is $3,000. And he said, yeah, where should I send you the art material? And I made a sale. And then I thought, wow, they're also in the sales trading business. Maybe I call others. And sure enough, I sold more and more advertising. And to make that long story short, I build selling power into a glossy magazine, and then we put it on newsstands. Then we put it on United Airlines in the seat pockets, like 10,000 copies every month. And and sure enough, we became the number one sales management publication in the country.
Wow, man. Fascinating story. Holy shit. When it came down to, yeah, huge props for that, man. Wow. When it came down to getting the initial clients coming in for the advertisers, you said the first advertiser came to you. Nowadays, you
Yes.
were selling advertising space in your magazine, right? Is that the kind of the business model
Yeah,
now?
but we changed the business model
Yeah.
changed. We in 1999, I remember we had Salesforce.com as a steady advertiser for 5 years. I remember there was a call that came in from General Motors to Salesforce, and they said, "Well, we saw Selling Power magazine ad about Salesforce. We are interested,"
Hmm.
and they closed an $82.5 million deal. And that was cemented the relationship with Mark Benioff and Salesforce, and they're advertised on the back cover for 5 years in a row. And he even invited me to the New York Stock Exchange when Salesforce.com went public. And I remember in 1999, I got a call from Prime Media, and they said, "We want to buy Selling Power. Come and visit us in New York." And I met with 8 vice presidents, and we had a wonderful meeting. At the end of the meeting, they handed me a letter and said, "Here's our offer, $10.5 million for the magazine." And
In
I
99.
thanked them
In
in
1999, that
99.
offer was placed. No shit.
Right,
Wow.
right.
And then you said what?
And I went down the elevator and I thought, I don't want to sell my baby.
Huh.
I don't need the money. We make good money. I put my kids through school, through college, and I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And sure enough, Prime Media, went under a few years later. And I think if I had been smart, I could have sold it to them for 10.5 million and buy it back, 2 years
Ah.
later for a
But you
couple of
couldn't have
million.
known they were going under a couple of years later. Don't be hard on yourself for that one. But
Right.
yeah, but it happens, man. So you kicked yourself in the ass for that afterwards, eh? You saw they went under and you were like, shit, I could have bought that back on pennies on the dollar. Oh man.
Right. Well, those are nice fantasies to have, but it didn't work out that way. But then the internet came and sucked the honey
Yeah.
out of the publishing business.
Ah.
Google got all the ads,
It moved the
and
hive.
they had to come up with something else. And I remember that conversation I had with Mark Benioff, where he says, "Garrett, print is dead." And I said, what do you mean print is dead? We're doing $7 million in print advertising. And he says, the internet is going to change everything. And you may want to look at your business model. And that woke me up. And I created the Sales 3.0 conference. I thought, what are we doing with the publication? We help sales leaders um, with the three challenges that everybody faces: aligning people, process, and technology. We want to help them build better people and help them develop better skills. We want to help them improve processes, and we want to help them select the best technology stack. So we took the show on the road, and we had our first Sales 3.0 conference in San Francisco, and it was 2.0 at the time. And it was a phenomenal success. People loved the content. They loved to listen to the top leaders in the industry and to authors and experts and analysts. And the sponsors were happy. Um, so we started that business 14 years ago, and we still run that Sales 3.0 conference. And now we are morphing into the AI space. You know, we have developed an AI for sales newsletter. We are currently looking at the top 50 AI companies for the sales space. We are analyzing those, and we give them a selling power score, uh, um, reliability score, and because there are a lot of companies out there. There are probably about 400 AI solutions for sales, and some of that is you know hallucination software, and some of it is really, really astonishingly good. And it's really hard for a buyer to spend the time and analyze all that.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, so I'm curious what you think about the parallels between the internet coming out and AI coming out now, because I feel like there's a massive correlation between the two of them in terms of technological advancement, in terms of the massive shift in the marketplace, the changes that are happening right now. Um,
Yeah.
we've got an AI trained to write beautifully written sales letters. Now, Gerhard, you might not like it because you didn't like the freaking book that I sent you, so you might not like the sales letter. I don't know. But we'll see. I'll send you a sales letter afterwards. We'll see what you think about it. But
Yeah,
anyways,
absolutely.
yeah, you can take a
No,
look at it.
I think that my take on AI is this: it needs adult supervision. Technology
Uh,
is like medicine. Medicine has side effects, and sometimes the side effects are really worse than the disease. And with technology like AI technology, you want to adopt sort of the perspective of the master. You are the master, not AI. And AI is the assistant. And AI is really sensitive to the questions. You can ask very ignorant questions and get intelligent answers, but you can also ask very intelligent questions and get hallucination answers. So you need to be the judge of. I use ChatGPT as a thought starter. It sparks my
yes,
creativity, and it
yes.
helps me tremendously. You know, I just wrote a LinkedIn post on how to spot a fake buyer, and I asked AI to write something, and it was very generic and
Yeah,
boring. And
yeah.
I immediately cut it down and amplified it and researched more things. And I just published it last night, and I got like 1,100 views overnight. Um,
Interesting. So
and
you do that
to me,
manually? You take what ChatGPT gave you and then you manually cut it down, or you cut it down with further prompting?
no, no, no. I rewrite it.
Okay, okay, I see. Because you got the copywriter background, so you know what to look for, you know what to change.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, man. I
I'm
fascinating.
having a lot of fun with it.
It's so
When you
fun.
look at the
Hell yeah.
evolution, the way words are communicated, the way we translate reality into words,
Mm.
the old way was done by typewriter, and then the keyboard of the computer replaced the typewriter, and now we're going to a second level where we use ChatGPT as a thought writer.
Ah,
We
interesting.
use thoughts to get content.
Of course, of course. So you it's kind of switching the game up. Before it was you were the thinker and the typewriter is the mass communication piece, the tool
Right.
that you used.
Right.
But now you're looking at it reverse, as though ChatGPT or AI is the thinker that assists you in further your thinking. One of the ways that I love to use it is by asking it what are the best questions to ask to solve this
Yes.
problem. instead of just, because we don't always know the right questions to ask. And so I think
Right.
that's the hardest part is finding the right questions, finding the right prompts to put in to get the answers, to get the solutions you're looking for. And that's
Yeah,
the approach
Kyle,
that I like to take.
you mentioned something really interesting because that reminds me of the Werner Heisenberg quote, the physicist. He said, nature does not reveal its secrets. It
Mm.
only responds to our method of questioning.
Right. And that's exactly the point. And so a method of questioning that's optimized is going to be a method of questioning that's going to give you the optimized answers. And so if you have the
Right.
right questions, you can get the answers you're looking for. The biggest problem we have a lot of the time is not finding the right answers, it's finding the right questions. And I feel like with ChatGPT, we're able to find maybe not the right questions because we'll never know what the right question is, the right when, for whom, in what context. But
Right.
it will give you a lot better of a start as opposed to well doing it on your own anyways. I mean, how do you think about that? Because you thought independently for so long. I mean, I'm only 28 years old. AI came out in the prominent space last year. So you've got, let's say another 50 years, 40 years of thinking without AI. So how has your perspective changed in terms of how you think now?
Hey, I hope you're enjoying the podcast, and I want to let you know that I've got a free book that you can get if you want to tap into more of these resources. And you can get that for free at kylesbook.com. Back to the podcast.
I think it's really a turbocharger for curiosity.
Mm,
Curiosity is something that a quality that I don't know whether you can train a curiosity, but I always enjoyed looking at problems from three different perspectives. When there's a challenge, let's say you want to grow a business, how would the Germans do it? Um, maybe by having better processes. How would the French do it?
a little less
Maybe by
organized.
yeah, creating something that is more grandiose, that appeals to the senses more.
Mm,
Or how would an American improve it in taking out the cost and where the savings? So I speak three languages, so I can analyze the problem in three languages. And to me, multiple perspectives are really needed in order to solve tough problems.
ah, interesting. Ah oui, tu parles en français avec Paris. Ah, je
Oui, je
parle,
parle français, aucun
oui,
problème.
oui, je parle un peu de français, seulement un peu. I live in a French-speaking area, and so people around here speak French too. Different kind of French than they speak in Paris. It's a different dialect, that's for sure. Different
Avec
accents,
un
but
accent canadien.
exactement, oui. And so it's a different perspective that you can take. Interestingly enough, you look at it as though there's a different way of thinking per territory. And you capture something interesting there. And I think what ChatGPT is able to do is take you through different territories in a way that you would have been stuck in your own box, stuck in your own
Yeah,
jar, unable to read the label, as Joe Polish would say, right? Instead of that, you're able to access different viewpoints, different um, ways of thinking, different ways that somebody else in
right.
Paris or in Germany would think, and you're able to access totally different viewpoints. I hadn't thought about it like that. It's an interesting way of looking at it. Hmm. Yeah, it's fascinating, man.
Well, a lot of people get stuck in one way of thinking, and
Yeah.
it's the same when you're on a sales call. You could ask a customer, "Is there a different way to think about this situation?" And pause and see what they come up with.
Hmm.
So a good salesperson expands the thinking capacity of the customer and appeals to the imagination
Hmm.
and challenges the customer. There's a sales system called the Challenger Sale, but it's the to me there's nothing traditional about this world. There are so many. I've been on sales calls with salespeople in Japan, in France, in Germany, in England, in Belgium, in Austria, in Italy, and every culture has its own little rituals and or its own little norms. But the basic challenge, uh, overcoming the bias fear of making the wrong decision, is universal.
Of course it is. I mean, it's evolutionarily based, right? At the core of it. It's
Yeah,
back, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, if we made the wrong decision, it would mean death. And it's
yeah,
only, and it's still to this day, if you think about it, but it depends on the decision. But it was for a lot more decisions back then. For example, our food is safe now. If they made a mistake with their food, they could have been killed by that decision, right?
right.
I want to get into the sales aspects of it a little bit because where I'm coming at it from is when you say challenging selling, I look at that as expanding a customer's horizons, examining their belief systems, dissembling them and taking them apart and saying, okay, so they're looking at the world through this lens. I need them to look at the world through this lens to buy my product. What are the shifts that I have to take place? How are they looking at their identity in a way that is incongruent with buying my product? How do you look at all of this?
Well, it's all conversation navigation. To me, a good salespeople are masters at the conversation. So where they, I compare it to chess.
Mm,
You have an opening game, you have a middle game, you have the end game. In sales, it's the same thing. And if you make the right opening moves, um, the goal of the opening is to get the customer to a position where you enable them and empower them to express themselves fully, frankly, and freely. So once you have that relationship established so that you are not there to push something, but you position yourself as a co-creator of the sale,
mm,
you can go to the middle game. And the middle game is all about the substantive issues, the structural issues related to the customer's problem or challenge. So you need to understand what they're dealing with. You need to ask the right question, and you need to completely listen. And by listening, I mean not just hearing, but also sensing and interpreting what you're hearing before you respond. A lot of salespeople just think that the conversation is like a ping pong ball where you toss ideas across the net. It's not so.
mm,
You want to truly understand the challenge and the potential solutions that the customer is grappling with. And then when it comes to the end game in chess, it's the same in sales. You don't want to end up with a draw after all this work that you have done. You want to win the game, and you want to allow the customer to gracefully surrender to the overwhelming evidence that you have presented logically and emotionally.
You see, I don't know if I like the chess analogy. I liked it at first, but the more I think about it, the more I realize it's an opponent kind of a framework. You're looking at the person you're selling as on the other side of the game, and you're playing against them. But what you really said in the middle piece there was you want to take them on your side of the game and show them what you're seeing, so that they can make the right moves
Right.
for them. And so it's not a ping pong game. It's not a chess game. It's
No,
it's cooperation. It's enrolling them as a coworker, as somebody who
yeah,
is
it is a
on your
process of
side.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's a process of co-creation.
co-creation.
But on the other hand, I like the chess analogy that you want to go for the kill. You want to go
Ah,
for the for closure. You cannot be there's a was a wonderful article in Harvard Business Review about the two qualities of a good salesperson. One is empathy, the other one is ego drive. And empathy is all about understanding the feelings that people are going through and responding emotionally in an intelligent way. But there's also the ego drive that salespeople need to have that hunger to win and close the deal.
Hmm.
So if you have too much empathy, you are sympathizing with the customer's problems and you're never going to make a sale. If you are overdoing on the ego drive side, you try to bulldoze your way through the sale and you get a canceled order or you don't get anywhere or you get thrown out. So we need to find a balance
Yeah.
between empathy, ego drive, and the best salespeople know how to play both.
Right. You're talking about yin and yang, the black and white, the balance between the self and the other. And that's
Yeah.
an interesting viewpoint to look at sales. I like that a lot. How do you go about finding that balance? How do you know when you're in that balance?
Yeah, somebody once said you want to use yourself as an instrument. There's a term called integrative conversations where you integrate three things. You integrate what you're hearing from the customer with the design of the conversation that you had in mind, the your ability to negotiate, that you got to keep your plan in mind because you want to go into any sales situation with a plan and a purpose. But then there's the third entity, which is you want to listen to yourself and use yourself as the instrument that where you are sensitive to what bubbles up inside while you're having the conversation with the customer. So you don't push a solution prematurely. You wait until the right moment
Mhm.
where you pull from a shelf of possibilities the right solution or the right word or the
Right.
right response
Mhm.
that leads to that aha moment where the customer says, I haven't thought about that. That's really a good idea.
Interesting. You say to pull the idea from the shelf. And the image that comes to mind is pulling a book from a bookshelf. And I'm thinking,
Yeah,
what else is on the bookshelf that we can get access to? That's something that we should go into the sales conversation thinking about is what's on their bookshelf and what books do we need to pull out and show them for them to
yeah.
agree from their own perspective. It's an interesting way of thinking about sales. Wow. It's fascinating, man. All right, let's shift gears a little bit. I'm curious in terms of how you go about thinking philosophically about sales. How do you, when you look at the selling situation, what is your philosophy of sales and the macro scheme of it?
Well, I think that there are different ways to think about it. First, I think of sales as the economic engine that drives business forward. So the American economy is largely run by sales engines that are either personal or online. That's sort of the macro view. A micro view would be that the sales conversation is really an experience
Mm,
that can be forgettable or can be memorable. And I interviewed a lot of salespeople and sales leaders, and everybody can talk about their most memorable sale. Everybody has one trademark story. This is my most memorable sale. But nobody has one really bad experience that is memorable that I want to share with you. So to me, sales can be an uplifting experience that is life affirming, that is joyful, that to I've a third way of looking at it that we all, are in this world on a stage and we play our role and we need to be faithful to that role. So we need to identify with who we are 100%. I remember interviewing a sales rep, and he says, "Well, if sales doesn't work out, I can always start an antique store." I love antiques, and I think I'm gonna be good in selling that. So people, when they don't have their hearts and their minds in their profession, and they don't show this in the persona, in the way they show up, people can sense it.
Mm.
To me, selling is all about being authentic.
How do you be authentic in sales? That's the ultimate question. Because it's easy to be inauthentic when it comes down to having a motive behind what you're doing. Because sure, you're conversing and you're building a relationship, but you're also having that motive at the back of your mind saying, this is the goal that I'm trying to lead them toward. So, with that
Right.
goal in mind, how do you leverage and really generate that authenticity?
Well, I don't like the word coercion that the way you used it just now. I think it's persuasion. Some people some people actually use the term pre-suasion. Dr. Cialdini came up
Cialdini.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is an interesting way because it is, to me, success in sales is all about the right mindset, the right skill set, and the right tool set. And the mindset is that you go in to the situation with your best intention to have the best outcome for the customer and for you. So you want to optimize everything in the conversation. And that's not a process of persuasion or manipulation. That's actually an act of co-creation.
Right. So that goes back to your philosophy of it. I'm not sure if I used the word coercion. Did I?
Yes,
I
you
did I really? Okay, well,
did.
coercion could be looked at as positive and negative, just like anything else could. It would be an act of coercion to book a spa day with your wife because you're co-creating that experience together. The root word of coercion is still cooperate. You know what I mean? So either way you look at it, it's always cooperation, and it comes back to bringing them back onto your side of the board and reaching for their bookshelf and thinking, okay, so how are they looking at the world, and how am I going to model what I'm selling as a fit
Yeah,
for how they're
I
looking
wanna
at
yeah,
me?
I wanna share a quick story.
Please.
When I grew up in Austria, in that neighborhood, we always build little igloos, where a little snow fortress, and there was an unwritten code that only the people who contributed to the creation of that snow house could go in,
Mm,
and others we kept out. And so I remember this from a psychological perspective that we defend what we help create. And that's
mm.
why I want to invite the customer to co-create with us.
Yes, you just tapped into something fascinating. You're talking about building, you're creating that experience. Like it goes back to what we talked about earlier. You're creating that experience. You're making them a co-creator in that experience. And so that way, when it comes to moving forward with the sale, they're defending you and themselves in terms of making the decision to work with
Right.
you because you're on their team. That the snow story is an interesting one. I'm in Canada here, so it resonates with me. It brings me back to when I was
Right.
a kid, thinking about the little snow forts that we would make. Yeah, interesting, man. It's a fascinating way of looking at it. To That's a fascinating point that we defend what we create. And so if we can create an experience with the client where they're creating it with us, they're naturally inclined and predisposed to want to defend the decision of working with you. It's
Right.
There's a lot of psychological nuance there, and I feel like it would be difficult as hell when it comes to implementing that. How would you go about implementing it? Let's say in a sales webinar or in a automated sales situation, going back to the AI conversation. How do you co-create an experience with a client like that?
Well, I think that you know, engineers have figured out how to make the sign up process to a website painless and almost enjoyable because you have that functional euphoria moment where you say, "Wow, that was really easy." But then you have engineers that design, pathways, digital pathways that lead to frustration,
Mm.
and people abandon the sign up process. So the onboarding of is needs to follow a certain pattern that's engaging and enjoyable. It is the same thing with a customer. Uh, the Chinese say if you shouldn't open a store if you cannot smile.
Ha, interesting. And nor should you be a salesman if you cannot smile
Right.
or have those cooperation experiences. Um,
Right.
it's a good way of looking at it. Okay, interesting, man. So, one last question for you, and I'm fascinated by this. You said that you interviewed hundreds of salespeople probably in your life, right? You've talked with
Yeah.
and you've trained more than 10,000. And so, what's the most important, the most crucial lesson that you've learned from those experiences? The 80% that's going to be washed away, but the 20% that will achieve the 80% of the results. What's that 20%?
Well, I think that the best salespeople are learners. They are perpetual students. They stay hungry and they stay humble.
Hmm. Beautiful, man. All right, let's leave it with that, my friend. Gerhard, it's been an absolute pleasure, dude. It's fun talking with you, man. Absolutely.
Likewise, Kyle, you in Toronto, right?
I'm in Montreal. That's why we speak French up
Oh, in
here.
Montreal.
Yeah,
Oh,
Montréal,
Montreal.
oui. Oui, oui.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, I have to come and visit, and I want to have a good lunch and enjoy the. I've never been to Montreal.
you'd like it, man. Especially because you're from Europe. You would especially like it because it's got a very European vibe to it, a European
Yeah,
flavor. Different from the Germanic flavor. It's more so I
right.
guess a French flavor would be accurate, but it reminds me of Italy, old Montreal. There's a very
Yeah,
European vibe to it. So yeah, I would love to have you up, man. We can go for a lunch
and
and
there's Mont Tremblant.
exactement. Yeah, no kidding. And we can go for a nice ski. Do you ski?
Yeah.
You come off as a skier to me. Yeah. All right, man. It's been a pleasure, dude. Anything you want to leave us with?
Um, well, I think that we both have a passion for helping people see the world in a different way.
Yes.
And uh, and that's what publishing is all about. That I remember as a kid, my biggest growth came from reading books, because I discovered there was a world beyond the country inn I grew up in that my grandmother ran, and all our neighbors were farmers. So I thought that was the world. And then I read a book and I thought, wow, there's an ocean. I've never seen an ocean. And,
Yes.
you know, anyway, we in the business of helping people discover
Mm.
the beauty that's out there.
Mm. Oh, I love the way you just tied that together. Beautiful image, man. Gerhard, thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for co-creating a better world.
Hey, my pleasure,
Right.
man.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that podcast episode. And if you want to get a free copy of my book, go to kylesbook.com and you can get a copy there. I'll talk with you soon.